This podcast is brought to you by Tethered. Now, with deer seasons winding down, it is a great time to take the plunge into saddle hunting, especially if you've been considering it. Maybe you've just wanted to try out the gear before you made a purchase. So with that, our friends at Tethered are always coming up with ways to help saddle hunters. And this year, they're doing the Tethered Teach and Train Tour, and it's hitting 20 different cities. And the session is 100% free to attend, where you'll be able to try out all their gear. So here's what's happening, or what is also included in the event. There's a free lunch or dinner, depending on the time of the event. All their saddle hunting gear will be in one place, so you can test absolutely everything that they have. And then there's going to be lots of giveaways and freebies. There's event-only pricing and discounts on Tethered gear. And then there's insider access on some gear, so you'll get a sneak peek as to some of the things that are yet to be released. Then there'll also, of course, be saddle hunting experts there available to answer any of your questions while you're hanging and trying out the different gear. So head over to tetherednation.com and check out the Teach and Train Tour page to see the list of cities and dates. I'm planning to be at the event on May 28th through the 31st at the Seven Springs Tack Shoot, so I hope to see you all there. The first thing I do in the morning before a hunt, before a scout, or just before getting ready for work is have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there listening are the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and donates 10% of its profits to conservation organizations to help secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 killer roasts of coffee and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 164. Today's part 2 of my conversation with my friend Zach Ferenbaugh of the Hunting Public, and we're continuing to talk all things public land hunting and ground hunting tactics. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. I am feeling way better than I was last week at this time after the first weekend of the Harrisburg show. Caught the infamous Harrisburg, whatever that stuff is, which was not great, but feeling much better. Was actually just got back from the Harrisburg show, so I was just there. It's Sunday, so I'm kind of getting this up front in to try to get things ready for this week, because, again, have another crazy, busy, hectic kind of week. And so spent the weekend there with my boys at Exodus, Chad Sylvester and Jake and the crew, and did a podcast with them, which will be coming out here in the not-so-distant future, I'd imagine. And then also, if you follow on Instagram, you know we were having our annual roundtable, and we recorded that podcast with a 6-man crew, which was cool. And that podcast will be probably coming out here in the next few weeks. Have a few things to get out before that one comes out, but today is a super cool show. We're not going to beat around the bush here a whole lot. Actually, let me back up for a second. The one thing I will say, this time of year, it's, hunting season's over, as far as, deer hunting goes, and it's kind of gearing up for shed season and maybe getting ready to do a little bit of scouting and stuff like that. But, for me here in PA, the weather's been pretty crappy lately, rainy, kind of, pretty shitty, to be honest. So get a little cabin fever this time of year, wanting to try to get out and do some stuff, but the weather's not always cooperating. And then, I'm going to be honest, I think I've mentioned this a couple of different times where, after the season ends, especially, this year where I had, tough hunt while I was traveling and stuff like that, and just put a lot of time in, I'm usually ready for a break. And it seems like the Harrisburg show is always the show that I kind of get jazzed up about. Like, I've been to ATA before, and that's fun. You get to see a lot of buddies and stuff like that. But it's all guys that that are hardcore hunters and stuff like that. And everyone's almost, I think, at that point, to some degree, almost on like a little bit of a burnout of the season, so to speak. And what's cool about the Harrisburg show is that it's a consumer show. It's the biggest consumer show in the U.S. I'm pretty sure it still holds that kind of that title. I think they said Saturday, the second Saturday of the show, there was 30,000 people ish that ended up making their way through the gate, which is just phenomenal numbers. But what's really cool about it, whenever you go there, and I was working the Exodus booth and meeting people, and thanks for those of you out there that listened to the show, that came out and stopped by the booth to say hello. I always enjoy chatting to you guys. But everyone kind of stops by when they're checking out gear and stuff like that, and they share their hunting stories from the year, and you just talk deer hunting with deer hunters from all over, because the show attracts people from everywhere. Like people coming in from New York. You have some people coming in from the South, and just it's pretty insane the kind of the melting pot you have of people from the different places at the show. And it always kind of like refuels my tank and gets me jazzed up to get ready to get back into like the deer hunting whitetail mindset. Now, I'm not going to lie and say I'm like all the way there where I'm ready to like grab my bow and hit a tree necessarily, for like a 10-day grinder. But it's definitely got me excited and ready to get back, looking for the first opportunity to get back out into the timber and do a little bit of scouting, maybe pull the last handful of cards that I have in cameras that I've let soak. I usually kind of set the bow down for like a couple weeks after the season because I shoot pretty much all year round, but I do take a little bit of a break after the season and kind of just recalibrate and so forth. And it's like today I got home, and it was sunny out. It was nice. So I grabbed the bow and I went outside and shot for like, 30 minutes and flung some arrows and it felt good. And so that show is always kind of good for that because it's a bunch of like just hardcore outdoorsmen that show up and they want to share their stories with you. And it's just cool, man. And I just really like it. So I just want to say thanks to all of you out there that continue to kind of fuel our stoke, sharing your stories and stopping by and talking deer hunting with us. But today's second part of the conversation I had with Zach Ferenbaugh. So, everyone out there, I'm sure, knows who Zach is. If you listen to the last podcast, you're even more familiar with him. But Zach is the long-haired fella from the hunting public, who hunts a lot from the ground. That whole crew hunts a lot from the ground. And the first part of the podcast, was really he and I were talking a lot about just public land in general and some missteps and mistakes maybe that have been made and things you learn along the way whenever you make some of those mistakes and stuff like that. And as we get into this second part, we definitely get more into specifics around ground hunting, how he approaches it, what type of setups you want to look for, how to get set up, like how to play the wind when you're trying to, get in position for a ground setup, how quickly or how slowly you move whenever you're kind of still hunting through to a setup, how you use terrain and vegetation to your advantage and stuff like that. So we get more into the nuts and bolts of how he approaches ground hunting in this session. Which is really cool because it's something I've been thinking a lot about. Of course, it's something I'm adding to my bag of tricks, like I've mentioned, and it just was really helpful for me because there's some things that he mentions and that we talked about that are things that I kind of had thought of or had painfully learned. Like for an example, is just when you're approaching a deer for a stalk on the ground versus, hiking in, and trying to keep the wind in your face to a degree. At some point, whenever you're putting on a stalk or you're trying to hunt from the ground, there are instances when you're going to have to give the deer the wind more holistically, right? And that was what kind of, screwed me in Iowa on the one, big deer I had seen in that draw in that CRP field. And that's exactly what busted me. Wind in my face, but he was looking in my direction because he had the wind to his back. So in that open country, it becomes a little bit more challenging to play the wind because you're trying not to get busted with the wind, but you're also in a situation where they have an advantage in terms of a visual advantage as well. So we talk a little bit about those types of things and scenarios and how you might play some of those things out. So with that, we're going to jump right to it. Again, want to thank Zach for coming on. Super rad for him to come on. I always look forward to talking to him. And of course, want to thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wanted to ask, man, because it's one of those things where I think maybe people, when they think about hunting from the ground, that they maybe overlook a little bit. But when you're talking about terrain features and stuff like that, like, I think, a lot of the people who listen to this podcast probably have a general understanding of terrain and how deer might want to use terrain, whether they're funnels, pinches, whether you're talking about, benches, or you're talking about saddles or whatever the case is, or if you're even just talking about an edge that's created by habitat, you know what I mean? That they're going to want to travel in those areas as your basics, right? But how do you use them as cover when you're hunting from the ground? Because I imagine terrain plays a key in terms of like how you're going to set up and how you're going to move.
Yeah, for sure. So I can use, so I guess just simply put, like terrain oftentimes masks your sound and, any ability for the animal to see you. It's like permanent. It's the best form of permanent cover is ground, right? Mm-hmm. So like if I'm on the backside of a ridge, I understand, and recognizing the fact that like now's my time, I'm going to move fast. Like if I think the deer's on the other side of that ridge, I'm moving fast. He can't hear me. He can't see me. Mm-hmm. And if he does hear me, he probably can't differentiate me from another deer or a turkey or a squirrel. Right. And I've gone as far as this season. I started carrying a turkey call with me, and just trying to sound like turkeys just on the backside of ridges. Now, I got people, saying, "Oh, that's stupid. You're just drawing more attention to you." Well, I don't believe that to be true. On the backside of a ridge, they don't know the difference between me and a turkey.
Right.
Now, if I think that deer can actually hear me, then I want to sound like a different animal. I don't want to sound like a human.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using that terrain, say, hidden sight and sound, and ultimately, I think, kind of inevitably, if you got a whole ridge between you, the deer probably can't smell you either. And then a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm just like, I'll move fast on the backside of a ridge, but then as soon as I pop over that, I'll change that speed, that pace, down to like that snail's pace that I've talked about. Like, again, like I might be running up the backside of the hill. I might just be giddy and super excited and been drinking caffeine all mid-morning, and I'm literally running up this hill. But as soon as I hit that top third, where, and again, I'm going up an area where I don't think the deer are, but I'm moving towards an area where I do think deer could be. I'm slowing way down. And then it's just a matter of like, okay, how can I continue to hide my body off the backside? That's one of the things that I do all the time when I'm moving uphill is the old, like, squat, take a couple steps, pop up. Because I don't want my silhouette going across the top of any horizon at any point. The best way, in my opinion, to prevent that is down and then pop up. Because you're not moving. The only thing that's happening is like a shape is going up.
Right.
An example I can use of that is, so Grant and I were in Nebraska. We were muzzleloader hunting. So we made this real long stop on this buck and ended up shooting him. And I was telling Grant, I was like, hey, make sure you're doing the down and up, down and up. Because if he sees us and he just sees the top of our heads, he's not going to know what we are. But if he sees like a consistent movement right towards him across the top of the hill, at this time we still didn't know where exactly the deer was. If he sees that, he's gone. So we were going down, crouching way low, keeping the terrain between us and where we thought the deer was, and then just popping up. You're minimizing movement across the top. And then, let's say, and he ended up killing that buck. Awesome hunt. One of my favorite ones of the year.
Nice.
But anyway, let's change that. Let's change it a habitat example and say we're in big timber in Pennsylvania, maybe like, high points, ridges, secondary ridges, stuff like that. Maybe we think these deer are going to be on bench. And maybe you got a west wind coming over the top of a ridge running north and south. And we think that bench right below the top is where we think these deer are going to be bedded. So I make crest over the top of that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stand, I'm going to watch, and I'm going to listen. I now know that I've exposed myself into a different area. Like now sound travels different. It's not getting blocked by the backside of this ridge. Now I'm at the top of that ridge.
Right.
I got to now get on that bench. So the first thing I want to do is I want to glass. I'm going to pick apart every damn stick. Is that a tine? Is that an ear? Is that a doe's tail? What's going on down there? And the more you listen, that's when you break it down. You almost do, when you're still hunting, you're almost doing the setup, right? Like
right.
That's now almost your setup. You've entered a new world almost. You slow down. And then, maybe you glass and make sure the coast is clear. Then it's again, like taking a route where now you can be as quiet as possible, but not just seeing skylines. You don't want to spend a bunch of time on the top. If you drop down and you get on that bench, but slowly. And now that you're in this bench where you think deer might be bedded or traveling, now it's a matter of like finding that extremely slow pace of like you're moving, you're always thinking where's the next best better. Like if I see a buck 60 yards up there moving around, how do I get to cover fast?
Right.
Or how can I make, maybe a less than ideal situation? Can I make that work? How can I stick to the shadow? And then it's like it comes into that decision-making thing I was talking about earlier. It's like, I may be glassing up ahead of me 60, 70 yards, 100 yards in timber on a bench. I'm taking a couple steps and I'm listening. Listening is an underestimated thing for whitetail hunters because I think you can kind of get pretty visual in a tree stand. You can sit in a tree stand and you can be like, hey, I'm just looking for deer. No, you're not. You're listening too, but like When you're moving, I think it's really, really important to not like overlook listening, because that can set you off. And if you're moving right, if you're moving perfectly, now it's hard, and I by no means do it right every time. If you're doing it perfect though, you're always going to hear the deer before they hear you.
Right.
Like always. If they're moving. So, I think get into an area then, and then it's like, keeping that wind in your favor and just moving through, because say you're moving through a bedding area, you're checking that side, you're thinking, okay, I'm trying to get to this saddle that connects this bench to the bench on the other side of the ridge. I'm going to check the sign in that saddle, see if it's worth setting up in there, see if it's worth revisiting. If there's a bunch of really hot signs, maybe like from today, maybe I'm going to really put the brakes on and try to find where the stuck is. And maybe I find a big fresh track in a big open scrape. Like, hey, he's in here today. I need to slow it down. Continue to scout my way through, marking little spots on the map where I'm like, okay, I can come back here and set up, or come back here and glass, or whatever it may be. But hey, you're slowing it down again, even more, because you now know you're reading that sign the whole way. But there's a lot of situations I get myself in. I spend a bunch of time. And this is so funny, because I feel like sometimes when I'm with somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience doing this, where it gets really confusing, I may spend like an hour and a half trying to get on this bench. And all of a sudden I get on this bench and I'm like, well, hell, there's nothing here. And then I'm just flying again. And I'm just like plowing right through it. And I think that really confuses some people. And like, but it's like, I don't want to waste any time. I spent a bunch of time in case they were here. But as soon as they're not, I want to make up that time that I wasted.
Right.
And just cruise it and get through it. Now, yeah, you're going to make the mistake of like one of these times you're like, oh, he's not in here. Like, there's no good sign in here. There's no box betting on this terrain feature. And then as soon as you think that, you let your guard down, you start walking, you bust right out of the spot where you just seemed, void of deer.
Right.
It's happened plenty of times. But it's like, there has to be that point where you have to recognize that, you're going to try to get as much done in a day as possible if you're not going to stand. If you're scouting, if you're still hunting, I don't even like to put the name on it. It's like when you're hunting,
right.
Because like when you're scouting, you're hunting,
yep.
Like, so, when you're hunting like that, at least in that style on the ground, like, you gotta know that you're going to be covering the ground. You gotta know when to pull off. You've got to know that, like, this isn't worth my time. I need to keep moving. I need to be as efficient as possible with what I'm doing today. And I think that's the tough part. I don't think that anybody masters it perfectly. You just continue to get better at it. I think, it just comes back into finding that fresh sign. It's the same thing as like setting up. You don't want to set up on that bench if there's no fresh sign on it. You also don't want to be taking an hour to still hunt a whole bench on a ridge,
right.
below the high point of a ridge, because you don't want to take a bunch of time when there's no deer in there. So
right.
As soon as you see it's no good, moving on.
Right. I think there's one thing you mentioned that I think is interesting about, hunting from the ground, and just, or even just still hunting your way to a setup that you're making your way to if you don't hunt from the ground, is that everything and anything is at your disposal to use as cover. You know what I mean? Whether it's a terrain feature, whether it's habitat, whether it's sound. Like, I know it made me think of when I was in Montana on that elk hunt. The bull that we ended up finally killing, my buddy Luke and I were sitting on the side of this mountain, and we had 3 bulls that were bugling, that were going off. And the one we could tell was a herd bull that had his cows with him, and he wasn't going to go anywhere. The other 2 were satellite bulls that were trying to see if they could pluck a cow here and there, but not get too close for fear of getting their ass kicked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we're calling, and then, the one bull that we'll just say was to like the left of us, you could tell he was kind of moving away, right? The one to the right of us was still, he would come within probably like 80, maybe 100 yards, right? Like just close enough. And then he would back off and be back out to like 150. And then he would come in a little bit, and then he would back off. And at this point, now that we located, we were now cow calling, right? Because we weren't necessarily wanting to get him like all pissed off. We were trying to get him to commit. And he clearly was scared of that herd bull. So there was no way he was going to come into bugling, so we're, hitting him with a cow call every so often, and he just wouldn't break that like 80-yard marker. And so my buddy Luke looks at me and he goes, "Look, man," he was like, "he's not going to commit because he thinks he's going to get his ass kicked if he tries to pluck one of these cows too close to that herd bull." He's like, "So what we're going to do," he's like, "is I'm going to call when he bugles." He's like, "We're going to run like hell as fast as we can," because we figured his cadence. It was a bugle and then like 2 chuckles, right? And so we knew we could probably run and make it like 20 yards or so, like every bugle. And so we called, he bugled. While he was bugling, we ran because as he's bugling, he can't hear us, and so we closed 20 yards. And then we would wait a little bit, and then we would call again. He would bugle. As soon as he would bugle, we would run again. Finally, we broke the distance. And once we broke that like 80 to 60 yard mark on him, he started committing. We could hear him getting closer. And so it was just that, like, it was using that, his own vocalization against him, as cover, you know what I mean, to close the distance to be able to get a shot opportunity. And I think that's the interesting thing about hunting from the ground is that, like, it's the ultimate MacGyver move. Like, it's whatever it's whatever you can happen to use that's at your disposal. Like, you didn't bring it with you. You're just going to make something happen, which is just really intriguing to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, how that relates to deer. I mean, I could pull out a ton of examples of cut distance using a deer's move to, basically using it against him. It's like anytime a deer's moving, they can't see, man. Like, that's the other thing about hunting off the ground. It's like everybody's just like, oh, you're gonna get spotted. Like, that's the reason you hunt out of a tree stand in the first place. You don't get spotted. It's like they can't see you. They can't. They see movement.
Right.
But they can't just pick you out very well.
Well, that's the reason why that you'll find them staring directly at you. You know what I mean? And like just looking at you, and you're like, do they see me or do they not? It's like, well, they see a thing.
Right. Like they don't see things the way that we do. They can't. Like if you read any, and I'm no expert on it. I'm not about to sit here and give a bunch of facts on deer fighting. But
come on now, give me your cones and rods explanation here.
Right. But it's like, anything you read about it, like they say, in the simplest form, deer see movement.
Right.
And like, as long as you're like reading the deer, and again, this comes with experience, but it's like something that I love about like hunting off the ground is just that freedom of like not knowing exactly when, but like when you're in the groove, man, you're just in the groove. And like when you spot one and you feel like you're in a position, you're reading that deer, you're moving in, and you're cutting distance, and like, okay, heads down, I'm going to move. I'm going to move up to that shadow. And when I get to that shadow, I'm going to bend over that piece of grass. So when I draw, it doesn't get hooked on my bow. Okay, I made it to that spot. I did all those things. Now he's taking a couple steps to the left, but his head's down. I'm going to move to that shadow. And it comes over that constant, like, decision making, and you just are reading that animal. It's so, it's like it's so much more intimate, really, than, sitting in a stationary position. It's just like it feels more like, my buddy Grant and I made up this joke because we did a bunch of hunting like this together this year. It's like, it's just like, it's a predator style of hunting. You're truly being a predator. You're not just like waiting. You're going to kill stuff. Like, it's like a totally different demeanor than just sitting back and waiting. It's like you're going to it. And it's like one of the things that I did want to point out too, before I forget, is like visuals and like how to just keep eyes on stuff and how important it is to keep eyes and visuals on stuff. Now, obviously in timber, you're going to lose stuff, but like staying right in the same, staying to where you can see stuff, you can keep tabs on. It's like, if I'm looking at a stalking route, say if I was here and maybe a patch of CRP or something, it's like I'm not going to necessarily try to put myself in a position where I can't keep checking that deer. Nothing stresses me out more than moving in on a stalk and not being completely convinced that he's still there.
Right.
It's like that's a hard position to be in. You want to know that he's still there, so you want to try to keep visual on whatever you see. Now, that being said, there's going to be a situation too where maybe you've got a well, here's a great example, and I think can play into like, okay, what if I spook something? So this is a little bit more specific to like, well, no, it isn't. So, and I haven't done this as much as other people that I have talked to about ground hunting, and specifically Jake and Ted from the hunting public. So one of the things that they do is they spook bucks, and then they just go right back after them. Basically, they're getting that visual by a hard spook. Like the deer, saw, heard, smelled, or all three, and they're running the hell away from them. And like what they'll do is they'll just go. And Jared Scheffler from Whitetail Adrenaline, who I mentioned, I mentioned Whitetail Adrenaline earlier.
Yep.
Does a lot of ground hunting. It's one of the things that we learned from him, listening to him talk about it on podcasts and stuff. Like, he just will go right back at them. Because a lot of times deer, they'll put a terrain feature, or they'll put a habitat feature between you and them, and they're going to slow down. Like, they don't run. Everybody's heard the term, like, busting them out of the county. It's never happened in the history of whitetail. Maybe when people are blasting at them with guns and stuff, it's a different story. But, like, when you're bow hunting in October, November, even later season, you're bow hunting and you bump deer, like they do have to stop at some point. I'm like just breaking that down. I'm thinking, okay, where is the next best play? You could be amazed, dude, at how many times Ted and Jake this past season bumped deer, watched them run away, and then got right back on them just by thinking, where's the next spot?
Right.
And I think that is like a really cool thing that, I've always told myself I want to try to do more of, but I haven't done a ton of it. I've done it, and I've definitely made it work, but like they did it a lot to the point where it's like, like it's worth just trying to bump.
Yeah.
It is. There's times, especially when they get does, like especially when they get does.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing. It's funny you mentioned Jared, because actually I just talked to him last night and had him on the show.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, which was cool. And we talked a little bit about keeping visual and stuff like that, and that's one of the things that I think for me that will be probably like one of the biggest like differences. Right, is constantly trying to keep an eye when I do locate something. Right, it is making sure that I'm watching where it's at. Not only that, but like, how is it does it bed down? How is it bedding down? Making sure there's no other deer with it, or if there is a deer with it, if is the doe going to move? And the one thing that he had mentioned that I thought was interesting was that he basically he was saying he likes to be able to put a visual on a deer, like just say like you go out in the morning or whatever, and he'll find one at first light or whatever, and they'll bed down. Now he said basically like he's going to sit and watch and not put that stalk on, because typically he was like, they're going to bed down, just call it 7, 8 o'clock, whatever the time is. He's like, and then a lot of times what he's found is like, they're getting back up by like 10 and then they're moving. He's like, so you don't want to get caught in that stalk in between, like whenever they decide to make that like secondary morning move or whatever. He's like, you want to be kind of positioned to be able to like watch where they go, and then they bed down again and then be able to make your move. Which I thought was kind of interesting.
I agree with that. I think, when you're specifically talking about bedded bucks, it's like bedded deer in general. It's like they shift a lot more than I think we think, and sometimes they shift big areas. They may shift a whole like ridge. They may drop down into a major valley and shift ridge sides just based off of where the sun is. Where the warmest area on the hill is that day, or at that given part of the day. And I think, conditions change throughout the morning. It's a really good point. No, it's like, just being, not getting to a point where you get so aggressive that you lose track.
Right.
You know what I mean? I agree with that statement. And I think, I really do think that Jared is like, I respect the hell out of the way that guy hunts, just because I do feel like I've been able to pick up on a lot of things and had the confidence to go do what I do. If it wasn't for him and those videos, I don't know that I would have done it this early in my life, and right. I think I owe a lot of it to, those guys and their videos. And I guess the reason I say it so much is because I like whitetail drone videos better than our videos, and I do. Like they're way more entertaining. And they get the craziest footage I've ever seen. And like, it's because they got a group of guys that really knows, how to hunt off the ground, and I think it's pretty cool stuff. And I think that, you can always learn from other people doing something similar to what you're doing. So,
right.
I always try to make sure people know about their stuff, and also know that, like, I'm definitely taking a lot away from what they're doing. I've learned a lot from them too.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I mean, I think that's one of the cool things about, just, the hunting culture in the group. More, I think it's the larger majority is like everyone's, willing to teach, and, especially if someone shows an interest in learning and stuff like that. And so it's interesting to hear that you've picked up stuff from those guys. And I talked to him yesterday, and you and I have talked, on a couple of different occasions, and you're paying it forward now to me, which I'm trying to pay it forward to the people who listen to this, you know what I mean? To where it's like, cause he may have, you may have picked up stuff from him, and it's like, and now I'm talking to you, and it's like, now I'm trying to add it to my bag of tricks. Right. So it's like, we just all kind of continue to try to pay the goodwill forward, and keep the fire burning, if you will,
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But so how much more time do you have before your plane departs, man? I don't want you to miss your flight.
No, it's good. I mean, I'll probably be good for. So it is 6:30 here. My flight starts boarding at like 7:30, so maybe a little after 7 I wrap up. But
okay.
So your time, that would be a little after 9, probably.
Yeah. So I got a couple more questions that I wanted to follow up on.
Dude, I'm totally down for answering more questions. Like I said, I'm having a good time, and I like talking about this type of stuff. So yeah. Like as many questions as you want before about 7, 10, or 15.
Right. Nice. So the next thing I wanted to kind of think about, or that I was thinking of when I think about, trying to add this in to the bag of tricks, is, when you say you're, we've already kind of covered like how you're not getting to a spot in mind. You're kind of, still hunting, scouting, combination of slowing down, speeding up based on what you're seeing, et cetera. But say you for example, you get to a spot where it's just like undeniable. You got a bunch of fresh scrapes, a bunch of fresh rubs, you're in like a bedding area or whatever. And like, okay. And maybe it's in the evening, right? And you're just on the outskirts of a bedding area that they're going to be making their way out of that bedding area, and you're going to set up, right? So when you go to, talk to me about how you'll set up, what you're looking for in a setup, and then specifically, do you prefer to have setups where you're sitting, or do you prefer to have them where you're standing, or is it just completely dependent on what's available?
That's a great question. If I can be standing, first off, always going to be standing. For one, it's more comfortable for me. You're not hunched up. You can move around a little bit. I like to be able to move in a setup. Most people would say you're moving way too much, and like, I disagree, but like I move a lot. Like I stand, I crouch, I sit, I move. I'm just constant. I get up on trees a lot. Like if I can stand up on a stump and get 2 or 3 feet taller, I'm going to do that. But like the ideal setup has some factors to it. Like usually has the ability to stand up and have your lower half covered in the simplest form. Like basically you find a little spot that's about the size of a beer bed. A lot of times it is a beer bed.
Right.
So you're basically like tucked up to, maybe you've got some a multifloral rose bush around you. And when you're standing in that bush, you can look over. So when you crouch, and you can look over it, but your lower half is covered. And as soon as you see deer movement, you can slowly crouch into that cover. Now, once you've crouched into that cover, the things that are important when I'm looking for a spot set up, number one, can I get that bow drawn back in a lot of different directions? Like, can I shoot at least 180 degrees around me? And the reason I like to do that is because, and one other thing that I will say, and I would rather spook a deer from practice drawing too much than to not practice draw. practice, draw your bow in ground setup, tree stand setup, in any setup that you got, like, draw that damn thing. Because as soon as you get complacent, that's when you bounce your arrow off that multiple rose bush that's your cover.
Right.
And I don't want that for you. Draw. Make sure you can get that bow moved around. Make sure you're not getting it hung up on stuff. Make sure you're not going to bounce your cam off the down tree and the log that you're using as cover. Like, there's so many different things that you want to make sure that you want to make sure you can move that bow around. That's super important. But horizontal and vertical cover then is the next thing. Is like, if you can mix, like, in the timber setting, trying to relate a lot of it to timber just because, for one, I know that's like your situation
Right.
often, and then just a lot of Eastern in general. I think it's their situation also. It's just timber. Like, if you're in a position where you've got, say you've got a downed tree, it's got, a big log, and then it gets to the top of the tree, and it's got, a bunch of bigger branches, and it's kind of rotten. But, it's just something that when a deer looks at it, it can't just say, or let me take a step back. When you're looking through the woods, I always say when you're looking for deer, whether you know it or not, or you say it or not out loud, it's like you're looking for horizontal shape in an otherwise vertical world. And where that gets tough to pick deer out is when horizontal shapes and vertical shapes start mixing up. If you're looking through the timber and you see what is, multiple different shapes in different directions all in one spot, that's cover. Because a deer, especially, when it scans through that, does not out shape, does not pick a stubby human in that tree top, but it will pick out a human sitting on the ground in just a general stand of maples, for example, where everything's going vertical, and then you're sitting on your knees, this ball of human, and you stick out. But if you mix that horizontal and vertical cover, then you blend so much better. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a ghillie suit or not when that's the case.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the timber can be completely open. So you get that one patch of cover with that down tree. You're, maybe standing up in that down tree or something. And then you've got all those factors. You've got horizontal cover. You can stand up. You can crouch down. You can draw. And you've got all that stuff. You're in what I consider the perfect ground setup. And I think just a lot of times you'd be surprised too how much you can get away with as far as like how little horizontal cover there needs to be. It's like sometimes it might just be like, maybe an October windstorm came through and blew like one little branch off, and there's one big oak tree, and one of its branches lay on the ground. That's that horizontal and vertical cover. I can hide most of my body behind that big oak tree base on the trunk. But then if I need to shoot, I can just use that little bit of horizontal cover with that, limb with leaves still on it, kind of hanging at the trunk. Or maybe I'll just pick it up and move it over and then create my own cover. Just trying to get that break up, but still being able to shoot. That's the key. I feel like it's easy to jam yourself into a position where, you kind of get yourself jammed. You're trying to get too much cover, and then you can't shoot out of it.
Right.
Again, dude, I feel like the older I get, the more I just like preach this. Draw your damn bow. Just make sure you do it. You know what I mean, though? Because like it's so easy to mess up. I'm like, I think some people, I don't know, maybe this isn't true, but I feel like some people love to make like, yeah, bounce my cam off the tree limb as an excuse like that. I don't want that to be, and I don't want to tell people that.
Right.
And I don't want anybody else to tell people that. Like, I want you to kill the damn deer because you drew your bow back in the setup. And again, whether that's in the tree stand or in the ground, like, don't make that mistake. It's such an avoidable mistake. Yeah. And I tell people that all the time. Just get comfortable. And then, because the more you do that, then the more you're going to be able to open your door to do things like still hunting or stalk hunting, where maybe you're making a stalk. Maybe you've drawn your bow in a bunch of setups, but then all of a sudden you finally get that opportunity where you will watch a buck. So you're in a ground setup or in the tree stand, whatever, You watch a buck bed down with a doe, and you know right where he's at. In my opinion, there's no better situation to be in. Because now you know right where he's at, and now it's game on, baby. Now all you got to do is get inside of 30 yards of that thing. And it's always doable. There's always an angle on him.
Right.
But say you're in that position, and you're moving in, and we get to about 50, maybe it's like 52 yards. Right as you get there, all of a sudden, doe stands up. The buck stands up. And he starts pushing. Well, if all of a sudden you're in a position where you're like, oh man, I got to make this work right now. You've drawn your bow in so many different situations on the ground, so many setups on the ground that it just becomes natural. And you don't mess that up, because if you don't practice it, then you're going to find yourself in that situation where you're on the ground, all of a sudden stuff starts unfolding. Like, you're not in the right position. Every step I make in the woods, I'm thinking about where my bow is. I'm not only thinking about where my bow is, I'm thinking about where my elbow is when I draw that bow. And I'm thinking about how if all of a sudden all hell breaks loose, and in a matter of seconds, I got a buck at 7 yards, how can I shoot this thing? You should be thinking about that every step. And the one way that you're going to improve your ability to be effective in that situation is to draw your bow like nonstop. Draw the bow. I mean, it would probably be ridiculous to know how many times I've drawn my bow.
You guys should make a video, a montage cut up of just how often you draw your bow. Like,
I mean, it would be hilarious. It would be hilarious.
Nice.
Because, like, I just think that then you get to a position, you really do it. So, I don't know how much you watch our videos, but I shot a buck in New York that I stopped, and I was making a move, and he jumped towards me. Car kind of got him spooky. And he jumped towards me. Well, I was reading that deer. I was moving in on him because he'd stood up at the doe. I'm watching his eye. I'm watching his antler tip. Every time he's not looking at me, I'm just moving in. I can see the doe's ears. I'm just reading that. I'm moving in. But every time I get to a spot where I'm in the shadow, I tuck up into that shadow and make sure my arms are free. And right when I got into one of those spots, when that sucker stands up, I was mid-move, but I was moving to a spot. I see him jump, and as soon as I see him jump, I basically dove for that spot. Like, I just slid into it and got my arms ready, get my arms up for the shot. And he runs right up, and he sees something that's there. He doesn't know what it is, and he's looking at me. Now, again, if I wouldn't have been, if I wasn't so conscious of where my arms were, I could have totally been in a position where I wasn't up with the bow up. I wouldn't have my arrow pointed right at him, but I had the arrow pointed right at him. Releases on the string, and my arms are ready for draw at any second I get the chance to do it. As soon as I get that chance, I'm ready. Now, I could have been not paying attention or panicked and just hit the dirt, but I got into a shadow and I shot and I held still. And he looked at me, but he didn't know what I was. I was in the shadow. I'm using the limited cover. Again, very limited cover, but I'm using what I have to my advantage. I'm patient. And as soon as he gave me a window, it was a tiny little window. I just drew that bow right back. It was perfectly, I visualize every time I draw that bow too, a situation where I'm thinking, okay, I'm visualizing that buck. What is he doing? And I visualize it. And because of doing that hundreds and hundreds of times, when the situation was finally there, I did it like he was done. I knew he was dead before. As soon as he started looking, even given the slightest attention back towards that doe, I knew I was going to get a chance as long as I just held my ground and was patient. And I think a lot of that comes from drawing that bow, man. It really does. Because all of a sudden you'll draw your bow and you'll be like, oh, that's something that could have went wrong that I would have never guessed was going to go wrong. Yep. How can I avoid that the next time? Yep. Important. And I'm not necessarily telling you or anybody specifically. I just think that, as a new bow hunter, I wish somebody, my dad always told me to do it, and I did it. But I do it so much now, and I've been bow hunting for a long time,
right?
A really long time. It's I'm doing it more now than I was when I was, probably needing to do it more, when I was a teenager. I should have been doing it more then, but I'm actually doing it more now because I realized the value in it. You
Right.
know,
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I think the other, it's even when you're cold, you should be trying to make sure that your
yeah,
muscles are able to contract to get the bow back, if nothing else. You know what I mean? It's like I know in the one ground setup I had this year, I had some good, vertical and some good horizontal cover. It actually was like some trees that had blown down during a windstorm that just made like a nasty mess. And there was just actually an open area in the center of it. So I was able to kind of slip into that I had some nice, just a couple shooting windows to where there was some pretty heavily traveled, trails that were kind of out in front of me. And once I got in there, and had a bunch of, kind of multiflora rows that was around it too. So I made my way into it. And so as soon as I got in there, I started drawing, to make sure I was going to be all right. Now I could get back and get drawn, but the thing that I'm glad I checked first was that once I got back on my way back, I got hung up in briars, and you could hear the briars like as I was trying to get
yeah,
drawn. And so if I wouldn't have done that prior to, a deer showing up, which I didn't even see anything that night, but if it had, and I hadn't done a test draw, I would have tried to draw back and totally would have made enough noise where the deer would have known that I was there. You know what I mean? And that might have been
yep.
all I needed, or that it needed to spook out before I had a chance to release the arrow. You know what I mean? So it's
Oh
just
yeah,
it's important, and I agree with you. Like the older I get, like the more I'm willing to draw. Like I'll pick it up every so often just and draw it to make sure, especially when it's cold out, to make sure that I'm going to be able to
oh yeah,
effectively get it back. It also will
yeah.
determine
And
too. It's like if I need to shed a layer, like I'll be cold versus not be able to draw my bow back. So it's like
for
if it's
sure,
cold
dude.
out and
Sure.
I have like too much clothing on and I go to draw and I'm struggling to get it back, it's like I'll be like, all right, cool. Looks like I'm taking an insulation layer off or something because I need to be able to get my bow back. So
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how much gun hunting you do, but I also do a lot of gun hunting. Same thing goes for your gun. I think I watch a lot of guys with gun hunt lessons. Aim a gun every once in a while. Like pick a spot, pull it up.
Yep.
Like get comfortable with that weapon. I think like you visualize, and I mean, I remember my dad and sport. I remember my dad really being the first person to ever tell me to do it. But other, sports coaches and stuff like throughout school, it was like, hey, visualize what yourself doing good. I remember my dad telling me that before football game night, night before football game, visualize yourself like tackling that running back. Visualize yourself like reading that play perfectly. And every night, or, every year that I play football and baseball, I visualize making contact with the baseball, visualize getting the ground ball, I visualize, hey, tackling the quarterback, intercepting the ball, whatever. And like, because I did that, when it was game time, that felt more natural.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel like, oh, wow, I did it. It was like, that's what I do.
Yep.
And I think that comes into hunting too. And it's like,
Totally.
a lot. It's like if you visualize, like, I go to bed even in March, and I think about that's how I go to bed at night. Every night as I visualize, my idea of the perfect hunting situation.
Mm-hmm.
And every night it's something a little bit different, but I really do think that comes into play. And every time I draw my bow, in my mind, I'm shooting something.
Right.
I'm watching. I think I'm really good at, like just at visualizing. I can in my head, I can pick out exactly how that deer is going to be moving through there, when I'm going to draw, when his head's going to go behind a tree, when I'm going to pull back, when I'm going to, how I'm going to settle the pin, how far, which pin I'm aiming at, how I'm going to pull that trigger. I'm going to watch that arrow go into him, and I'm going to watch him run off perfect. And like, I think that it's a weird mental game, but it like really makes you mentally stronger when you actually get in the game.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I think that that's just good advice and good practice just in life. Like no matter what it is, what
seriously,
I mean? It's like,
yeah.
You just,
right.
If you believe it, you can make it. It can happen. You know what I mean? Like, so whether it's you have a presentation at work or whatever, if you visualize yourself killing the presentation, like you're likely to go kill it. But if you visualize yourself failing and you're full of nerves, and like then you can expect that that's going to be the scenario. Like you will manifest your own reality. You know what I mean? Is essentially what it is. And and I 100% believe that. And I do similar things. Like whenever I'm going to go hunt, and I'll try to pick things out, and I'll do it in the off season as well. One of the things where I really started doing it, I don't know. I think you might know. A good buddy of mine lives around here. We actually live close together. Greg Litzinger. Do you know him? He goes by the bow hunting feed.
Yep.
You know Greg?
Yeah, I talk with Greg often. Yep.
Okay, yeah. He's a good buddy of mine. Like he's been kind of my archery sensei, if you will. Like as I got more into bow hunting, I actually got more into archery at the same time. Like once it kind of one obsession kind of led into another, and so I've really been kind of focusing on making some transitions, like to become a better archer to complement like becoming a better bow hunter. That way I can execute the shots I need to execute whenever opportunities are provided, right? And this past year I switched to shooting back tension release, and so I worked with Greg a lot to kind of make that transition and stuff like that. And we went to the range and shot, and I shot a lot with my eyes closed. You know what I mean? Like where I'm standing like 5 feet off of a target, or I don't even have a sight on my bow. You know what I mean? And I don't have a stabilizer or anything. Just me kind of blank bailing with my eyes closed, just to visualize that shot, a perfect shot every time. You know what I mean? And it was incredible because now it's like when I shoot it, it's like I don't want to say it's autopilot because I'm controlling the shot, but it's like I'm so confident when I pull that thing back. Now people would argue that because I missed a deer twice while I was in Iowa, but it was. But now it's like even with those misses, it was like whenever I finally killed, I wasn't like the thought never crossed my mind that I wasn't gonna kill.
Dude, I had a similar like not experience as far as like I think the visualization is slightly different as far as like how you get there, but it's like here I told a lot of people like every time I pulled the trigger this year it was like whether it was bow or gun or whatever, it was like that is a perfect shot. It was like I know exactly what you mean by that autopilot thing. It's not, and like you said, it's not necessarily what's happening, but it's like it's so much more instinctive. It's so much more just like you feeling confident. You draw it back or you pull the gun up, you just shoot. And I don't know how to even explain that necessarily until you got there, but it's like when you do, it's a good feeling because it's like you never miss. In your head, you don't.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're still gonna mess up, but like when you pull it back and you have that confidence, it's like a whole different level of shooting. That was like you're so confident. It's awesome. It's a great feeling to be in that. It's
what I would equate to like those who do sports, or have played sports in the past. It's like of being in the zone where it's like you have that game where it's just like you cannot miss, or like you're throwing BBs in a baseball game, or I wrestled growing up, and so it was just like everything the opponent did, like I could feel their weight shift, and I understood exactly where I needed to be to gain leverage, and it was just like things like that, or like I could see when he was going to step before he stepped, so I could set up a shot or whatever. It's just like it's when everything slows down so much so that it almost feels like you weren't even there.
Yeah, it's a really good. I remember. Yeah, I do love like. So I don't watch a lot of sports, but I love playing them.
Right.
That's where I'm at. I love playing baseball and football, and I love anytime I can relate like those experiences that you get from that to like life in general, or just like or in hunting. It's like I feel exactly the same way. Like, and one specific thing that I think about is like I remember like first time when I was a sophomore, I was playing linebacker on the varsity team. I wasn't a very big kid, but I loved to hit people as hard as I could. And I remember the people telling me like it's gonna be fast. Like your first varsity play is gonna be fast. And I remember it just being like, but it was over. It was like, whoa, that was fast. But then I remember by the time, even by the time at the end of that season, it slowed down a lot. And then by the time, my junior year rolled around, it slowed down a lot. But then by the time I was a senior, the time I played my last game as a senior, it was just like, this is like playing, it feels like the speed that it was when I was playing like middle school football.
Right.
If you get that experience, you get, like you said, in the zone to where like it's not fast anymore. It's not like it's like you basically can control your adrenaline, right? You get full on grasp of your adrenaline. I think at least I would assume the same thing in wrestling. But even in baseball, you get adrenaline when you have to bat or a ball comes at you, you get that rush. And if you don't know how to control that in any sport,
Yep.
you don't know how to control that rush, then you're going to start failing. But it's like you visualize, and you go into that sport, and you think, hey, I'm going to go, I'm going to do good, and I'm going to do this exactly the way that I was taught in practice. I'm going to execute perfectly. You get in the game, you do it. Same thing with hunting, The adrenaline rush is going to get there. Buck fever is a real thing.
100%, man. No doubt.
You're going to feel, your legs are going to feel like they're not even on your body. All of a sudden, your brain feels like exploding. But if you can control that enough to harness it, then you just have gotten into just a different level, I think. And it's just, again, it just comes with experience and just I really do think experience and visualizing and all that stuff. And then you get in the game, man, you play perfect. And I really do feel I'll remember 2019 as the season that I was gonna do it. If it was if the opportunity was there, it was gonna happen. There was not even a question. I mean, and I think this is a good thing, and I guess I want people to also feel this way. Is when I was hunting with my buddies, at PHP or some of my buddies from Ohio and stuff, it's we were saying stuff that was so confident that we're trying to sound cocky. Now, I wouldn't tell a bunch of people the stuff that we were saying necessarily because it would sound completely arrogant. But that's the attitude that I think you should have when you're with with yourself or your buddies. Go in there and you're going to get one. You're going to walk into that piece of public or that woodlot you got permission for, and you're going to kill the biggest spot. And don't go around telling everybody that, or people are going to think you're crazy. But every hunt, go in with that mentality. Seriously, and it really and I really don't want people to think that we were being cocky or disrespectful or anything. We just had that confidence that, hey, we can get eyes on one, or we can get into a good position. We are going to do it.
Well, yeah, I think
we're going to get awesome footage. We're gonna make a perfect shot, and it's gonna be awesome. And that's just a great mentality I think we should have.
I think it also plays into the mobile factor too. Whether you're in a stand, a saddle, or on the ground or whatever, that was one of the things for me personally that was a little bit of a that helped me kind of get over the hump specifically this year was that some buddies who their motto is if you're going in you're hunting and you get to a spot and you don't think you're going to kill, then why the hell are you there? And that's that same mentality of a mobile hunter, where it's if it's not the right spot, don't dwell on it, go to the next best spot and keep going until you find the right spot. And once you get to the spot where you go, I'm going to kill here, that's where you plan to kill, and so that was kind of my mentality, through all of 2019. It was kind of a watershed year for me from that perspective of trusting my instincts, reading the sign, being aggressive, visualizing what was going to happen. Even whenever I missed a couple times on that Iowa trip, I stayed as positive as I could. And I was just every day I walked out going, I'm going to kill, because it was 15 days of all day hunts. You know what I mean? It was every day. And I remember, as stupid as this might sound, but I was getting ready to get in my truck to go on the last hunt. I started packing up camp that morning before I went out for that last hunt, because I was I need to pack up and kind of get everything ready to roll, because I had to leave the next morning at 4 a.m. And I was hopping in the truck. I think it was around 11 o'clock. And I was going out for the evening, and I was hopping in my truck. And as I was getting ready to get in, I said to myself, I was all right, let's go kill tonight. I literally said it out loud to myself. You know what I mean? If someone would have probably thought that I was a crazy person, and sure enough, it happened. And so it's you manifest your own reality. I just kept telling myself that every day that it was going to happen. And then, lo and behold, it did. So, but man, go ahead.
It gets me fired. I just want to say one thing real quick. It's just it gets me so fired up to have that mentality. And I know a lot of guys, especially bow hunters, like to bow hunt solo and go alone. And I totally get that and respect that. And I understand that, because I have a desire to go alone. But if you want to see something funny and especially after I've been talking about this attitude of just overconfidence. Go back and watch the video where we got the buck, and we were 7 miles deep in Nebraska public, and we shot that buck. And watch our demeanor after we see that deer, and watch how it's funny to me to watch it, because it's just like these dudes are just so fired up. Like, not just me, not just Ted, not just Grant. It was like the four of us were so fired up, and like, you couldn't have brought us down. You couldn't have brought us down no matter what happened. We were going to go in there, and we were going to be successful.
Right.
And I truly believe, even if we wouldn't have walked 7 miles out of there without a deer, we would have been successful because we had that mentality. And I think that goes a long way. I really do. And I think it's funny, if you watch that video, you'll definitely be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. Like, the look on our faces, the giddiness, the way we take off running. It's like we are in the zone, man, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's I do a lot of bow hunting by myself just by the nature of like where I live, and there's not very many people around. But I think the important thing is like, having some road dogs that like to hunt like you, that get down like you do. You know what I mean? Because they're, especially if you like to grind, you know what I mean? Like, not everyone's fit for that or suited for that, because it takes a positive mental attitude. That's why, for me, it's like, I do a lot of hunting. I know you know this guy too. It's funny, we know a lot of the same people, which is interesting. But Chad Sylvester is a good buddy of mine, and he and I usually we make a trip to Ohio every year, unless I'm like doing an Iowa trip where I had points for or whatever. And there's a big piece of public he and I like to hunt together that we usually take a trip to. And we're going back this year, and the place whooped my ass last year, or not last year, but 2 years ago when we got there. And I'm sure you know where it's at, but it's
I can't make any sense of it.
Yeah. It's so we're bound and determined to like tackle it again this year. I'll see him at the Harrisburg show, and we're kind of road mapping like our next 5 years of like the hunts we want to do together. It's just because he's one of those dudes, and vice versa, that we found that where it's like, okay, you like to have really shitty tough hunts, you know what I mean, and you don't get down, and you like the grind, and you get fired up, and you're ready to roll. Like, every morning you wake up and you're just ready to spit bullets, and so it's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. And it's such a weird. I don't know. I feel like I can relate it so well to like, getting with your teammates before a sporting event and getting fired up and like you're getting almost mean, a little nasty. Like, you're about to go shoot something in the chest cavity with an arrow. Like, you got to be a little crazy, and you should get fired up. You should get excited, because I think it makes it fun, and it keeps you going. And I think feeding off that challenge and that mistake and that failure. I love I look back every year and I look at the tags we didn't fill, and they fire me up, and I like I said, I think about them for a whole year, and at some point throughout every day, I guarantee I'll think about it again until I get to try it again. And I think hunting with a group of guys that is also going to do that, and get as fired up about it as possible. It's like, and again, even if you're alone, but you have a guy in your camp, it's like you feed off that energy, and you go in and you hunt, the best you can. And I think that's really cool. Yeah. And I think it's just something that I feel like this year I really got even more fired up. I guess it's just that mentality in general.
Yeah, I might be a little sadistic, because I actually keep the tags that I don't fill, and I keep them in my archery closet until I go back to that place and kill.
I do the same thing.
Yep.
Do the same thing.
Yep. I have my tag.
The thing that
go ahead.
The thing that makes it worse for me is I take them to heart, even if I'm just a camera guy.
Right.
Like, I was just as much responsibility to figure it out as the person that was shooting. And I think that's what's fun about going with like all the guys that I hunt with, again, bow or gun, like, or just like, we're a team, and like, that's awesome. When you got that, it's just it's tough to beat. It really is. But I know exactly what you mean, dude. I hung my New Year's tag up from turkey up in my room after I didn't shoot that turkey, and that was the first time I think it was actually the first time I hadn't filled a turkey tag on an out-of-state trip, and it fired me up, man. Every time I'd look at it, it was just like pure disgust. But it was like, but that keeps me fired up. That keeps me going, and trying to learn.
Yeah. But hey, man, I know you're going to get ready to have to catch your flight, dude. I appreciate you coming on and doing this, man. I always love talking to you. I hope we get to run into each other here in the not so distant future. But as if anyone needs to know where to find out more information about you guys, if you wouldn't mind, just let everyone know where they can follow you, find THP and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So we have tons of YouTube episodes. We've been doing the deer tour and the turkey tour for the last several years. This September is when we're releasing that elk content that we're talking about. So, check out YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're also on Twitter now, which is pretty cool. I don't do much Twittering, but Ted is running the Twitter there, so there's content there. Pretty much anything that, any media that you can, or any media platforms you can find, we try to have some presence there. So you just search the Hunting Public. There's tons and tons of content. We got I know we're over 400 videos.
Yeah. So
we got a lot of stuff out there, and hopefully some of it is, at the very least, funny and entertaining because of our failure.
Right. Nice. Well, I mean, it's the content's killer, man. I always like it. It's one of the things that I turn on pretty frequently here at the house on my TV, on my Apple TV, and sit down in the evenings and watch some shows. And I've picked up a ton from it. The setup on the ground that I had in Iowa was pretty much a blueprint that I actually watched you on a hunt. When I saw that setup, when I saw that draw, I was like, shit, man. I was like, this looks like almost exactly like a setup Zach had in 3 videos I watched 3 videos ago. And so it was
cool.
So anyone who's not checked it out, for one, I question whether you live under a rock or not if you've not seen a THP video. But if you haven't, definitely check it out. They're entertaining, they're funny, but there's a lot of opportunity to learn. You guys do a great job of kind of bringing people along and teaching them along the way. So appreciate what you guys do for the community as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We have a lot of fun with it. And our main goal is just to, at the very least, let people know, some different strategies and hopefully learn something when they watch them, whether it's good or bad,
Right.
There's always something taken away.
Right. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, dude. You feel better, and safe travels.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those 2 things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.